Hi and welcome to Check Your Thread, a podcast about sewing more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 14 years and I'm the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge Me Made May. But like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis and the way that my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. I really hope you'll join me in this journey. So are you doing well? Are you keeping warm or cool or whatever you need to be keeping where you live? It has been so chilly where I live, although I totally understand that this is very relative and there are probably lots of listeners that would laugh in the face of a 2 degrees Celsius day. But anyway, I've been hunkering down and keeping warm with my Me-Made neck warmers and my Me-Made lap blanket, as per the Sewing to Keep Warm episode. Speaking of episodes, we finally managed a little update on the Check Your Thread website this week. You can now search through all the previous episodes much more easily, plus you can search by topic, for example, zero waste or mending. It's all still a work in progress, but now that there's so many episodes under our belt now, I'm glad that newer listeners can find what might be of interest to them more quickly. Oh, and if you happen to be visiting the Check Your Thread website, whilst you're there, please sign up to the free monthly newsletter. I am so rubbish at mentioning the newsletter, but it is a mini labour of love and you should sign up if you haven't already. I send it out at the very end of each month and it's pretty short but sweet. It always includes some behind-the-scenes chit-chat, links to cool stuff that I think you'd be interested in, and a summary of episodes you might have missed. Just scroll to the bottom of the homepage of the Check Your Thread website, where you'll find the box to pop your email address in. So have you been sewing or mending or doing anything creative since last week? This week I decided to cheer myself up about the cold weather, so I cut into an amazing piece of African wax fabric from my stash. The fabric came to me from Wax and Wraps, the African textile subscription business that we talked about with the owner Jacqueline Shaw back in episode 3. I've been using it to make an Anna Allen Anthea blouse and I am in love with how it's turning out. I've been umming and ahhing about what to do with this fabric for over a year and I think I made the right choice. The fabric has quite a bit of body to it, so it's really making those big statement sleeves sing. Sustainability-wise, I can't claim to have done anything new this week. However, I've continued to focus on keeping things in use for as long as possible. I've been encouraging my kids to have a clear out of clothes, books and toys that they no longer use, and I've been distributing them as best I can. Some items I've offered to specific people and families, others I've taken to the local charity shops, and some other bits I've listed on Olio. But I'm really trying not to overwhelm the local charity shops with the kind of stuff that they already have lots of. So I've been trying to find people to hand things to directly. So let me know what sustainability related stuff you've been up to lately. I could do with some inspiration, I think. Email me at zoe@checkyourthread.com or message me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Thanks this week to Nicole and CP for signing up to support the podcast via Patreon. So grateful to them for helping me keep making new episodes. If you think you could spare the price of a cup of coffee each month, please consider signing up at patreon.com/checkyourthread. I don't create any additional content as such for patrons. Honestly, I barely have enough time to do everything that I need to do in my life as it is. However, becoming a patron does give you access to a secret feed of fun little updates and behind the scenes sneaky peeks, including who I've been speaking to for forthcoming episodes. Right, before I forget, I am hopefully going to be welcoming back previous guest Amy Taylor for another conversation. Amy is the wonderful, vibrant person that I spoke to about natural dyeing back in episode 13. That was so long ago and I'd love to talk to Amy again and pick her brains further. So what do you want to know? I'd love it if you could submit any questions you have about anything related to natural dyes and dyeing techniques, so please message me via the usual channels. Thanks in advance. Okay, at last we can get on with today's episode's actual content. Lots of you let me know that you really enjoyed last week's episode with Alexis Bailey of Fibre and Cloth Studio, and today is the second dose of our conversation. This time you'll hear Alexis talk about the celebration and representation of Black pattern designers during Black History Month, plus she shares her approach and commitment to creating zero-waste sewing patterns. And we hear her opinions on the responsibility that sewers and designers have towards waste, and the innovative ways that she's exploring the issue within her own business. I'm ever so grateful to Alexis for being so open with me about every aspect of her work and her mindset around sewing and sustainability. She has lots of exciting things in the works, so keep your eyes on her website or her Instagram, and hopefully we can get her on the podcast again in the future. So remember to send me your questions for Amy Taylor. Have a great week and enjoy. How I rediscovered you after the initial kind of from Louisa was through following that hashtag of Black History Month pattern designers. That's the hashtag and challenge that's created by Natida from So Natural Dane. And that's to promote Black pattern designers and Black owned fabric companies as well. How did you feel being part of that? Obviously I'm probably not the only one that's discovered you through that.
It's just great to feel seen. I don't think until entering the pattern design community as a designer did I realize how less of us there are. Natida has a list, every year that she, it's out on her website right now, but, every year she brings attention to the list of designers. And I just think it's interesting how we as designers of color can be put on a list because there's so few of us. Right. I think last time I counted, there's 40 or 45 at this time of sewing pattern designers. And then she also puts knitting pattern designers and bag pattern designers. And we're on a list because you can count us versus designers not of color. There's no list. Even if you find different lists, they're not including everyone because it's so saturated. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to be seen and to be given the opportunity for people to give attention to us and to be part of that space and to be part of an area that doesn't have attention to it and to be seen, it's just a great opportunity that I feel I've had. Since even me coming on, I've seen other pattern designers kind of come up in their own space. And it's just been cool being a part of that and being part of a whole nother community where we get a voice and we get to share our own perspective on the pattern making process and to share what we love about garment sewing and everything with other people and just have a voice. So, yeah.
Amazing. I think she's been updating that list for about 5 years now, I think.
Yes. Yeah. The work she puts in it's so
a lot of
amazing.
Work.
Yes. Every year. Yeah. She does a great job. And this past year, because of Fatinia coming out last year, it was cool to two of the winners had my patterns. So that was cool. One of them was a Fatinia and I think the other one was a Yarrow. But it was cool to have my patterns be two of the winning challenge designs. So I was so grateful, but I don't think we get to be seen in this space a lot because, there's so much, stigma sometimes too about the design process with different races who aren't of color. And, we don't have the opportunity to spend money like some other bigger pattern design companies do. They get tech editors and they get graders and they get this, and this. And it's difficult for us to even get traction when we put out a pattern because, we're people of color. So, it's just nice to be in this space to give opportunity.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What she does is amazing. And
yeah.
Really look forward to the list being updated each year and getting.
Yes. Yes. I love it.
So let's talk about your explorations into zero waste design as well. So that's a whole other topic in itself, really, isn't it? So when did you first become aware of the concept of zero waste pattern design?
Birgitta Helmerson is, I hope I'm saying her name right, but Birgitta Helmerson, of course, is the big, zero waste designer. And I just have always loved the concept, but it's always looked like so much work. And it is so much work. I learned when making my own design. Yeah, I've always loved it and been intrigued by it. But she has 3 or 4 new designs out now than when I first found her. I thought it was cool that she had the box, kind of top. And then but she took it to a whole nother level of adding just different design concepts. So it doesn't look all futuristic and wonky. And it looks practical to wear every day. I have 3 zero waste crop tops in my closet, and they don't look zero waste.
Yeah.
Because they don't look zero waste. They look just like any other pattern. I always loved her take on that. Then when I made the decision to do something zero waste, then I wanted to make sure I approached it that way. I wanted it to be practical for wear. I also wanted it to be cute, and I wanted it to be something that people could wear all the time. So when I came up with the iris, it was originally just the bow blouse design. And then like it kept growing because I was like, you know what, iris can do more. And so recently I updated it
Oh, it's
with the
hard.
collar. Yeah, it was so much work and so much math
You must be
and
so
just a
proud of
lot.
it though, because it's amazing and there's so many options. You could make
Yes.
garments from the same pattern and you wouldn't even know that that had the same base.
Yes. Out of all of my patterns, Iris is my baby. It is the one I absolutely love. Whenever somebody makes one, like I almost go to tears because so much of myself went into that pattern. Like every pattern is an extension of me, but that one like took every ounce of creativity that I had in my body and brain to like make, and I didn't even know I was capable of any of it. And it was so cool to see Liz Haywood make the design too and make it her own. She had hacked the collar and made it a little smaller for her bow blouse design. And that's actually what spurred me. And I asked her, I was like, hey, can I use the hack that you did to incorporate it into an update that I'm doing to the pattern? She was like, sure. And it was just so cool to be able to be seen in that space and to work with other people in that space and just get inspiration. And
Yeah.
then for me to turn it into something that was my own was just so liberating. I felt like I took my design aspects to a whole new level. And so I want to do it more. And I even made a commitment to myself that this current pattern that I'm working on is not zero waste, the agave. But I told myself that after this one, I'm probably going to go more towards zero waste design just because I love it more and I'm more passionate about it. And so I'm probably going to commit myself to more zero waste designs in the future. I
I'm
love
so
it so
excited to hear
much.
you say that. So it sounds like you learned so much from when you were initially drafting and then updating your iris pattern. So
Oh, yeah.
how do you even begin? Like, how do you even approach it?
Uh, um, man, I put so much work into that pattern. Everything's like a blur. So I think it's how you see a pattern. Like when I before was talking about how I viewed the strata top, I
Mhm.
view it as a box, right? And I think it's how you see the lines on a pattern. You have to be able to section it off. It's like cutting each pattern into sections, seeing what you can turn into a square, into a rectangle, into a box, and even curves. I really have always loved that about Brigida and all people who are working in zero waste, like a Goldfinch Limited. Emily has done that too with her Jones trousers. The working of the way that you work curves into the process
Mhm.
is such a delicate technique that I have not mastered yet, but that I think is beautiful. So when you break the pattern into sections, see what you can make a box, then you see the curves, then you find out how to make the curves work with the rest of the pattern. And so I think the trickiest part for me has always been once you break down the sections into squares and stuff, and you've put the biggest parts of the pattern, like the bodice and the sleeves and the cuffs or whatever it is, and like you're left with like these little tiny sections that you have to like pretty much make work for the pattern. And so we call them a facing or we call them a hang tie and or a pocket or it's two pockets and you just kind of make it work. I kind of love that though because it really makes you understand how we process waste and how infinite the possibilities of waste can be. If only we did that with more regular pattern drafting. I mean, I already do whenever I have empty space. I'm like, oh, I'm going to use this to be a back pocket or something like that. But when you're designing for zero waste, you have to make that stuff work. And then you understand how much waste can be used if it's just incorporated properly. It's like you can get the basic concept of the design, but then you have to allot the little smaller pieces to make like a yoke or make different things. And that's always the tricky part for me,
Yeah.
at least. I don't know about everybody else, but if I can accomplish at least having very minimal waste, which the collared view of the iris is because it has like a few pieces, like you can make it a pocket, but if you want to just throw it away, like it's not going to kill the environment to have this little 5x5 square go into the trash. And that's something I've become, content with. Sometimes we can't use everything, but we try our best to use as much as possible. And I think Iris accomplishes that. It can be zero or minimal waste depending on how much work you put into it and how much, you want to use all of the fabric. So yeah.
Yeah. How's it felt when you've seen people's versions pop up on Instagram and stuff?
Oh, I think it's just knowing that because it's not a printable pattern, like at all. You can't print it. And I did that on purpose because I want people to understand what waste is. And when people ask me, can it be printed? I'm like, no, because paper is still waste, in my opinion. So knowing that they took the time to sit down and to draw the pattern onto the fabric and to make it, and it looks cute, it means they understood what I was doing. They understood the concept. And so it's so cool seeing them show up. Like, there's not many people who have made it, and I know why, because it's a lot of work. But when I do see somebody's pop up, it just makes me so entirely happy. I love it so much.
Yeah, you really have to engage with the zero waste pattern in a different way, don't you? And I guess some people maybe not are ready for that challenge yet. Maybe
Yes.
people are still like a bit tentative. But I think as more designs pop up and as more designers pop up,
Yeah.
it will be normalized and people will start to feel a bit more confident in giving it a go.
I agree with that. And I also think people don't completely understand how much the impact of fabric waste has on us. Just as, as people who sew, I've been impacted by it so much. I can't have waste in my area because when I cut patterns and stuff for the kits and everything, I'm left with so much that I have to somehow reallot. And I can have all the linen fabric scrap sales that I can, but I still have a giant box of waste. And so I've seen it. So I don't think people have recognized that as much in their making practice because a lot of people are trying to get more into slow sewing. Some people don't sew as much or as often. So the waste impact may not be that big for them. And so, it just may not be a priority. And I understand that too, but for me, being such a passionate person about the environment and about our impact as sewists on the environment, it just really speaks to me just having a design out there that accomplishes exactly what I wanted, but is still a practical pattern. It is a jam-packed pattern. It is 4 whole designs in one. And I love that. It's like you said, like it can be anything. I've actually been thinking about incorporating it into a jacket in some sort of shape or form, but I just love that it has so many infinite possibilities that are practical.
Yeah. So there's more zero waste patterns in the works.
Oh, yeah.
Future.
Yeah. I'm interested in just seeing how far I can go. I know it'll take time, but I think it also gives me time as a designer to just kind of work in the background, experiment, and kind of perfect something to bring out to the public in a zero waste manner. And then, in the front ground, I can still work on hand sewing because it's been a balance for me too. It's hard to work on machine sewing a pattern and hand sewing stuff at the same time. So working on zero waste stuff gives me a chance to work in the background while also just being meditative in my hand sewing practice still and keeping that going.
So also, you've just added a really interesting, I just literally just saw on Instagram that you've added a really interesting new waste categorization system for your websites. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So it's actually interesting. I woke up one morning and I saw someone's Fatinia. This was actually just the other day. I saw someone's Fatinia and it was so cute. It's a red plaid Fatinia, but she put, I take customer feedback so seriously because I always want to know how I'm impacting the people who are making my patterns. And so she loved it and it looks so cute on her, but she said that efficiently, fabric wise, it's not the most efficient because it's cut on the fold, the Fatinia. And she's right. And I looked at the pattern and I'm like, there's no way I can really change the pattern. Like sometimes I do that. I'm like, oh, well, I can change this and like, kind of tweak it when I see customer feedback. But I looked at Fatinia and I'm like, I can't really eliminate the waste because like the biggest size takes up less waste, but the 2 smallest sizes, they use a little bit more. Now, granted, it can be allotted. It's a large chunk of fabric that can be made into something else, but it just made me think about my own patterns and how I contribute to the waste aspect of people making them. And I've talked to a couple of designers about this too. Sometimes like we feel good about ourselves as sewists and pattern designers and what we're doing for the sewing community. But then sometimes we feel like the villain a little bit of our own accord because it's like we know sometimes our patterns aren't the most waste efficient. And so instead of beating myself over the head about, what I can and can't control and being upset about it, I'm like, everybody has their choice of what they want to make. And I'm not going to take down my pattern because it uses an average amount of waste. It's not over average. It's an average amount of waste. She just didn't like how much waste it was. And so I was like, I felt like I should be transparent with people about how much waste they'll have. left over for people who care. So I just randomly created, like, it was super random. Like, I went on Google and I looked up a black star, copied and pasted it, and put it into each individual listing, and just created like a tier system. And then I just shared it because I wanted everybody to know. But I went from 1 to 5, 1 being like completely the shoddy amount of waste. It's just completely like, this is not practical. And then 2, 3, 4, and 5. Most of them are under 3. Iris, of course, is a 5. And then my mahogany turban is a 4 because it was meant to use scrap fabric. So that was that purpose. But yeah, I just felt it was important to be transparent.
Yeah. Well, it says so much, doesn't it? It says about where your values are as a business. And I love that transparency of it. And I love that you're not like, I'm not going to like fudge this. I'm going to be honest because it is a sewing pattern. And I think most sewing patterns do produce a fair amount of waste, certainly more, I would say, than, because as well, when you're making a home sewing pattern, you're making just one, aren't you? You're not, I'm going to make loads and I'm going to tessellate all these pieces really tightly. And it's like, that's not how it works. We're not mass manufacturing here. So there is a
exactly.
Because even by putting that on there, that's going to intrigue some people that maybe haven't had that thought process yet. And they'll be like, oh, what's this? Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Oh, I wonder about how the other things I've made, how that would have compared. And I love that you're kind of introducing that to the conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's something that every designer, like, you just have to deal with it. I mean, even being introduced to pattern design, I came from making my own versions of other people's patterns. Again, I take the Strata top, for instance, it's cut on the fold. And so when I make people's, hand sewing kits and I cut them, I usually give people most of their scraps. But what I allot and re-allot back into, it's a giant large rectangle because the pattern's cut on the fold. Does that mean Meg as a sewing designer is just not sustainable? No, because her business is based off of being a mindful sewing pattern company. So, I don't know how people are going to allot scraps. Designers, we just put the design out there in the most efficient way we see possible. Sometimes it's not possible to use the entire yardage of fabric because that would technically be minimal to zero waste. And that's not how every person's business model is. So I think that as consumers, we need to learn how to use the waste that we have, not put it on other people for how their design needs to be. And I think I've seen narratives like that where, and I guess I kind of felt that way. Like, and I knew the customer wasn't like attacking me or anything. I didn't take it that way, but I felt in my head, I'm like, man, as a designer, like I should be doing better. But I'm like, no, as a consumer, even I know, if I have waste left over, I use it to color block something, or I use it to make a mahogany or something like that. So I wanted to be transparent with my customers so they knew how much waste they would have left over, so that you can make the decision for how you're going to use your waste and move forward. I just think it's so important that we all work together in the sustainability process of making sewing more efficient for us instead of saying what's wrong or what's right. Like, how do we work with it and move forward with it in a more productive process?
So do you have any scrap busting approaches for using your scraps that are some of your favorites?
Ooh, so mahogany.
I was going to say, how many of those have you got at this point?
Yeah, I think my mahogany is a great scrap buster. Personally, what I say is if you can incorporate that back to a garment, that is the most efficient way that I've seen. Like I said, if you have something that's cut on the fold, you're usually left with like this large rectangle. One person I love is Thread and Sprout. She does this perfectly. She makes these quilted garments. They're in color block sections and they're kind of wavy, and I don't know if you've seen it before, but amazing. It's like, if you could do stuff like that, take small rectangles or pieces of a garment and then sew them together and you make a full garment, then, you can do it in a way that I know some people don't like the whole quilted look because they think it looks too homely, but there are such cool ways of doing color blocking and print mixing and stuff like that you can make so cool that, if you just use your imagination, I think working it back into a garment or using the scrap pieces for later. You can cut bias binding as one thing I love to do. You can cut bias binding for another project. I think just being creative, thinking outside of the box, pockets, hem facings, saving a little mini box for later that you go back to, we can work with that and be more productive in how we use scraps a little more.
I think that kind of thing can look really cool, though. I think it can look really elevated, you know?
Yeah, I think so too. Like we talked about before, the idea that it needs to be like, from the store looking. If we get away from that and just explore creativity more as sewists, then I think we'll be more comfortable with, hey, like whole thing's purple, but the inside facing is green, and cutting layouts are a suggestion. They're not in any way told what you are supposed to do. Literally, as a designer, when I do a cutting layout, I know there are like 6 other ways I could have made the design on the cutting layout, but I know I can only do one, and this is the best one that I can find. But it doesn't mean that you can't go off and explore on your own, even fabric requirements. I mean, how many times has it been, it needs 3 yards of fabric, but we squeezed it out of 2 1/4.
Absolutely.
So, we have to play Tetris a little bit. We have to make it your own.
So what does your wardrobe look like? How much of it is made by you?
Oh, at this point, it's probably about like 85%. Let's see. I do shop vintage a lot of times if I need something specific and I don't feel like making it. Like I don't really like making skirts, so I'll buy skirts. So let's say like maybe 15 to 25% is ready to wear, but it's usually thrifted or bought from a vintage shop. Everything else, I'm surprised when I look at my closet and I'm like, where did I get this from? Oh, I made this. This looks really nice. Oh, kudos me. Pat on the back. I'm like, this thought it came from a store. I've been surprising myself, actually. Somebody will ask me where I got something from. And I'm like, oh, I got it. Oh, I made this. I'm sorry. I can't tell you. I can't help you. Sorry. But I'm very much a repeat outfit wearer. My closet's not huge. I do that on purpose because I don't like the complications of having to choose what to wear each day. Most of the day, even when I go out, I'm wearing the same shirt and pants all the time, like for 3 days until it's time to clean them. I'm home most of the time. And so I don't overcomplicate getting dressed. And if I do go out, I really like to be comfortable, which is how all of my pattern designs are. I just enjoy being comfortable in my clothing when I go out. I don't like things that are too fitted and everything, and it makes my wardrobe easy to mix and match.
Are there a lot of samples of your patterns in your wardrobe? Is that anyway?
Yeah. And then, again, my closet's not that big. So once I make a new pattern, usually some of those samples that I've had, they'll go into the shop for sale because I don't have room for them. I was gifting some Fatinias to 2 of my friends. I sold 2 on the website and everything. I'm just like, everybody just take a Fatinia because I don't have room for it anymore. So yeah.
So got some more patterns in the works. Is there anything else on the cards for Fibre and Cloth that you can let us know?
Yeah. I'm really working towards more YouTube content. I did not realize how much time it takes, though. So that is a work in process. One thing I would love to do is to make sew-alongs for all of my patterns and do that for people so that they know the intricacies of such, especially for beginners. As far as kits, I may or may not be working towards having my own patterns as kits.
I was going to ask you
in the future. I want to, but I'm super shy about it. And I also am trying to work out the waste factor that we just talked about for some of the patterns, because I want to make sure that I'm doing that adequately. That's like the worst thing I hate about cutting some of these kits is I know my customers don't want a whole bunch of fabric scraps. I give them a reasonable amount left over, and I know I don't like them in my area. So I don't want to keep creating the same process. I want to make sure that I'm doing everything efficiently. So that's a goal I have in the future. And I thought that I was not going to be doing the Strata Top kit anymore, but people love it so much that I'm thinking about bringing it back and just keeping it as a staple. So I'll see how that goes in the future. Hand sewing wise, I'm just going to keep experimenting on my own. I'm still relatively new to hand sewing garments too. I think people think I have it down, but I have learned from Louisa. I have learned from Sarah Woodyard of Sewn. And, it's always a process. You're always learning something new. There's no way you know it all. So I'm just happy to share the stuff that I'm learning with people. And I love that I'm part of a community where we can all learn together. So I just want to keep building the community that I'm part of in my own way, with my own narrative and perspective, in a more sustainable process for me, and also fabric and waste wise. I think that's my biggest goal moving forward. But I am just one person. So we're talking about like a year's worth of progress there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems that every kind of evolution of your business has been very organic. So it would make sense that that is how it continues going forward.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't waste time on things that I'm not passionate about, because if I'm not passionate about it, then I'm not going to share it with people, because then they'll sense the lack of genuineness. And I don't want anybody to think that, I don't want to just be selling stuff. I've been in the influencer space for a long time on my other account for Hello Alexis Bailey. And I understand, even as a person who absorbs content, I hate being sold stuff if I think it's just a selling point. I enjoy seeing stuff that I think the person actually cares about. And so I don't do anything that I don't care about first. I don't share anything or make anything that I don't care about first, because, if I don't care about it, then nobody else is going to. So I love being organic in this space. It takes a lot of time being that way, but I'd rather that than pushing myself and pushing other people to be interested in something, all fast and quick that, isn't really of any substance. So, yeah.
I love that sentiment so much. I think we should finish this conversation there, because that was beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. It's been so lovely talking to you and exploring all these different aspects of your business. And I wish you the very, very best going forward.
Oh, you too, babe. I really appreciated you supporting Fatinia and just supporting me in this space. It's so grateful. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!